Hello YouTube, this is Lucky from Team Kaiju Thunder, and today we're going to be discussing my Amorphage deck profile. The Amorphages are an archetype that was introduced in the Shining Victories playset, and their unique archetype abilities prevent your opponent from playing whatever makes their deck. So if you are going against Monarchs, you have ways to prevent them from activating spell cards and tributing, which is what makes them their deck so powerful. If you're going against Burning Abyss, you have ways to remove their cards from the graveyard from play, so they cannot activate their Burning Abyss effects. So this is an interesting deck that I have play tested at our local tournaments, and it has done fairly well both in the locals and at the YGO Pro Checkmate server. So let us begin our deck profile. We're going to start with one Amorphage Sloth. This Amorphage monster is a level 5 monster that you must tribute summon or special summon in order to get him to the monster zone. However, since he is level 5, the scales of this deck are 3 and 5, so he cannot be pendulum summoned under normal conditions. His pendulum effect is something that all Amorphages have in their scale effect, is that you must control an Amorphage monster for its effect to be active, and during the standby phase, you must sacrifice a monster you control in order to keep it in the scale, otherwise destroy the card. The pendulum effect that makes this one unique is that it prevents either player from adding cards from their deck to their hand, which kind of rates the opponent a little bit, because it's a Thunder King, essentially. So your opponent can't add things that he needs at a specific time. He has to draw them regularly. The next Amorphage we have is 3 Amorphage Pride. Its unique pendulum effect, which we don't use all too much, is neither player takes effect damage. We primarily use this as a scale 3 and also as a 1750 beater. Since the scales only go from 3 to 5, it means you can only pendulum level 4 monsters, so we run 3 of him to pendulum summon to your field, plus he's good for running things over. And the regular level 4 or lower Amorphage monsters, for their monster effects, they if they are pendulumed or flipped face up, they neither player can special monsters from the extra deck except for Amorphage monsters. For the bigger Amorphage monsters, which are Sloth and Goliath, you just have to summon them. You don't have to pendulum them or tribute summon them. You just have to make sure they get on the field, and then neither player can special from extra deck except Amorphage. We play 3 Amorphage Wrath. This unique pendulum effect prevents either player from tributing monsters except for Amorphage monsters. So if this isn't a scale against Monarchs, then yeah, you have the game. The only way for them to get out of this is to Stormforth you, but this deck has ways to prevent that as well. He's also a level 4, so we use him for the pendulum, and he has 1650 attack, so we use him for running over things along with Pride. Envy is a scale 5, which we don't use Envy as for his pendulum effect as much as we do for his scale. We primarily we run 3 because he is a 2050 booty, so early on in the game, if your opponent hasn't gone wombo combo and have 3,000 beaters on the field already, then it stalls him a little bit while you're getting your board set up. It's also a level 4, so he can be pendulum back from the extra deck and be used as tribute fodder to keep the scales from blowing themselves up. We run a triple Amorphage Greed. When Greed is in the pendulum scale, and you control an Amorphage monster, which is necessary for all Amorphages, by the way, for them to have an Amorphage on the field, monster on the field, in order for their scales to be active, scale effects to be active. While you control an Amorphage, neither player can activate traps except for Amorphage traps. So this prevents, if you have a Amorphage monster on the field and have this in your scale, you can pendulum summon without having to worry about a Solemn Warning or Strike or anything, essentially negation trap card. Then we play triple Amorphage Lux. This card cannot be pendulum summoned because it's a level 2, but we do like its scale effect, which prevents either player from activating spell cards except for Amorphage spell cards. So it is a 1350 attack, so we don't put him on the field as often as Pride or Wrath. However, there are ways to boost his attack, and once he gets a high enough attack, he's a decent monster to have in the monster zone. But we primarily want him in the scale, because against a Monarch deck, if you have Wrath, which you can't tribute except Amorphage monsters, and if you have Amorphage Lechery, then with these two in the scale as a scale 3 and a scale 5, your opponent literally cannot do anything. They cannot activate spell cards except for Amorphage, which they do not have, and then they cannot tribute except Amorphage monsters, which they can only do with Stormforth, but they can't activate Stormforth because of Lechery. So these two in the scale as against a Monarch deck Monarch deck is extremely in your favor. We play triple Gluttony because even though he's a level 2, we can't pendulum him. He has an 1850 booty, which is not bad. But his scale effect, which makes him unique, is neither player can activate monster effects. So it stops things from Burning Abyss, Lightsworn, and overall kind of like a skill drain. It still stops monster effects from being active. We play 2 Amorphage Goliath. This is our last Amorphage monster. This is their boss of the deck. In the scale, his effect is any card except Amorphage sent to the graveyard is removed from play instead. So he acts as a Macrocosmo except for Amorphage cards. So your Amorphages still go back to the extra deck while any other card gets removed from play. Since he's a level 8, we don't get to pendulum summon him. We have to tribute summon for him. But if he dies in the scale, there are ways to summon him from this extra deck instead of having to tribute for him. Even though I do occasionally tribute summon for him, because as the boss he has a 2750 attack, which is pretty good. And there are cards that even boost that up, so it is extremely hard to get rid of. And for the last pendulum monsters of the deck, play 1 Vector and 1 Lector to essentially stop Pepe decks or any other pendulum-based deck, because their monster effects are negated and their pendulum scales are negated. Plus, these two also run with the same 3 and 5 as all the Amorphages, so they act and they're also level 4, so they can be used as pendulum for tribute fodder, or you can negate a pendulum deck. We play triple Amorphage Infection, which increase their attack and defense by 100 for every Amorphage card on the field. This stat boost is stackable, so if you have 3, then you'll gain 300 for every Amorphage card on the field. So that will make Lechery a good attack and bring Goliath up to astronomical attack power. I've gotten him up to 6,000 attack before, but just because I had 5 spell and traps Amorphage cards, and then 5 Amorphage monsters and 2 scales, so he was ridiculous. We play 2 Amorphous Persona. This is the Amorphage field spell. So all Amorphage monsters you control gain on the field gain 300 attack and defense, and up to twice per turn, if a Amorphage monster is tributed, you get to draw 1 card. So during the standby phase, you have to tribute a monster you control, or the scale blows up. So when you sacrifice an Amorphage monster for the scale, you get to draw 1, and that essentially keeps your plays going. Then we have 1 Scapegoat, which we use primarily, actually only as tribute fodder bait. So if we're running out of monsters on the field and we have 4 open spots, but only 1 Amorphage monster to sacrifice, and we have 2 scales on the field, we would normally have to destroy 1, but the scales only need a tribute monster. It doesn't have to be Amorphage, so we use it at the Scapegoats to tribute fodder to keep our Amorphage on the field and keep the scales effects in play. Then we have 1 Terraforming to search out the Amorphous Persona. 1 Dark Hole, which my build of this deck is a budget build. So this is this can be replaced with Raigeki if you have it. I don't have it because it's a $30 card, so I decided to only run 1 Dark Hole. Triple Pendulum Reborn. This allows you to special a Pendulum monster from your extra deck or graveyard. This is how I primarily get the boss monster on the field. I put him in the scale, and if I can't pay the cost or choose not to, he blows himself up and puts himself in the extra deck. So I use Pendulum Reborn to just summon it to the field from the extra deck without having to sacrifice. And then you have a 2750 boss on your side of the field. I play triple Amorphage Lysis. This card decreases the attack and defense of all non-Amorphage monsters by 100 for every Amorphage card on the field. Also, if a Amorphage card in your scale blows up, either by you not paying the cost or your opponent blowing it up, you can replace it. Also, I forgot to mention about Amorphage Infection. If a monster you control is tributed or destroyed by power by card effect, you can add an Amorphage card from your deck to your hand. So you can, since it says card X and it doesn't say accept this card, you can add another copy of Infection or any other Amorphage monster you may need or their trap card. We run Skill Drain to keep the field in check in our favor, because a lot of the meta decks are spells and monster effects, so this is to help stop the monster effects from off. And then I have a Drowning Mirror Force and a Storming Mirror Force just as defensive cards, so if my field is open, I am vulnerable to attacks. These are to help protect me from that. And you can run 2 Storming if you don't have a Drowning, or you can Drowning if you happen to have them. You can run 2 Quaking Mirror Forces. Those are also very good. You can even play Wabaku, which prevents you from taking battle damage and your monsters from being destroyed by battle this turn. So, and 2 defensive cards, make sure that you stay safe and your monsters protected. Since this deck prevents us from playing special monsters from the extra deck, except for Amorphage monsters by their normal monster effect, we don't run any extra, so that makes this deck extremely cheap. For our side, we have a Magical Abductor, which we can, for every spell activated, we get to put a counter on her when she's in the Pendulum Zone, then remove 3 counters to add a Pendulum monster from the deck to the hand. This entire deck is Pendulum Monster, so you can literally add anything you want to. And it's also a scale 3, which goes along with the scale motif. Then we have one Rescue Hamster. It's a level 4, so we can Pendulum it like any other monster, like most of the monsters in this deck. It's also scale 5, which goes with the deck motif. Plus, this card can also add pendulums back from your extra deck to your hand, or allows you to search your deck for some, which keeps you having a scale up and ready. I put this in the side deck instead of the main deck because there are times where I misread its effect and it has, in the end, killed me because I misplay it. So I keep him in the side deck, and don't main him too often, but if you guys want to main him, that is perfectly fine. We have 3 Pendulum Impenetrables. This prevents cards in your Pendulum zones from being destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And also, you get to, if a card targets a card in the Pendulum scale, its entire effect is negated. So, if your opponent Twin Twisters a card in your scale and a back row, for example, and you chain with this, Twin Twister's entire effect is negated, and you get to keep your 1 back row and your scale. We run 2 supply squads in the extra. If you don't pay the scale, the Amorphage cards say if you don't pay the cost, the scale gets destroyed. So if you decide not to tribute a monster, you can destroy your own scale and draw a card off that, or if your opponent destroys your monsters by battle, then you get to draw one, or by card effect. So this is really to get you some plus cards in your hand, that way you can always have an out. Pendulum Shift is an interesting tech card that I have. I run 2. This allows me to select a monster in either player's Pendulum zone and change it to a scale from 1 to 10. So I declare 1 there, or any number between 1 and 10, or 1 and 10, and that's what scale becomes. So if I use this in my own deck, then I can change a lechery to a scale 10, so I can Pendulum Goliath from the extra deck or my hand. Or I can change a scale 3 into a level scale 1, so I can Pendulum these level 2s back from the extra deck. Or if I'm going against something like Pepe, then I can change their scale from 1, which is typically 1 through 8. I can just make it 1 and 2, so they can't Pendulum summon. It is a quick play, so you can activate it during either player's turn. We play 2 Pot of Riches to primarily get back any cards that happen to get warninged or stuck in the extra deck permanently, like Goliath and the level 2s. An extra buck to kind of help with draw power. For every time a card is sent to the extra deck, you put a counter on here. Send the card to the graveyard with 3 counters to draw 2. And 3 Reckless Greeds for draw power. One of the very few weaknesses I find in this deck is when they decide to take out your Infection. The Infection is a very good card in this deck, and when this gets taken out, if you don't have multiple copies, then it can slow you down a lot. But if you have multiple copies, you can afford to lose one. However, I would try to control the board by saying no spell effect. You can't activate spells or monsters, kind of to protect it. And once you have control like that, your opponent can't do much. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more deck profiles from Team Kaiju Thunder. This is Lucky here, and I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, and have a good day.